Hey everybody, this is Joel Morales, and you are watching a little bit of our X Factor XTM podcast. And we come on every so often, periodically, to just share trending happenings inside the world of tech and security. And so today I am joined with some serious tech veterans, and we got a lot to talk about, don't we? We got a whole lot to talk about. There's just all kinds of stuff happening in the world of tech and security, and man, I can't wait to dive right in. So, I am Joel Morales, Vice President of Solutions Architecture here at XTM. I also help run our enablement team, and I came into this organization about 6 years ago as a customer success executive, and then just really just kept moving around to different positions, right? So I helped work alongside of our NOC to help support some of our managed network service customers, our security customers, cloud customers, and then eventually worked my way into solutions architecture, and now I have the privilege of working and overseeing both the architecture team and enablement team. So, Samantha, why don't you go next?
Okay, yes. Hello, I am Samantha Nouvong. I actually work under Joelle at the moment, so I am a solutions engineer. Like Joelle, I've been here quite some time. So I've actually been here about 10 years or going on 11. So kind of been all over the place. I started as an implementation engineer, was an application engineer for a platform, and moved into CX, and now I'm solutions engineer. Ryan?
For sure. So I only started at XTIUM about a year ago, about 9 months. Before that, like way before that, I was an intelligence analyst in the Air Force, eventually moved to go teach at my tech school. So taught critical thinking and analysis, and then eventually wound up. There you go. Wound up doing cybersecurity through Intel support to cybersecurity operations. When I got out of the military, I really liked cyberspace, so I wanted to keep going. I started back over as a cybersecurity analyst and then worked my way up team lead, manager, and director there, and eventually ended up at XTIUM.
Hi, I'm Mike Davis. I'm a product manager here at XTIUM. I came here, oh goodness, about 16 years ago from Cisco Systems. I came in to help with development of our observability platform at the time and helped it through its evolution. I'm a triple CCIE, collaboration service provider, and enterprise. And look forward to talking with you all today.
That's awesome, Mike. How long did it take to get a triple CCIE? Like, what does that even mean?
Uh,
Because
an
I mean,
eternity.
I hear that the CCIE is like the equivalent of having a doctorate in networking. That's like as dramatic as I've heard it. So, what is it like to get triple CCIE? How long does that take you?
Well, it's different for different people. I actually prefer to think of it as an ability to tolerate pain, but let's see. So my first one, which was called routing and switching at the time, was 2001. My second for voice, I believe, was 2005, 2006. And then the last one for service provider was around 2013. It wasn't that it took that much time. It's just that you have to dedicate time and for studying, time for prep, sacrifice of family, and all that fun stuff. So it's not something that, I mean, there are people who are able to do it serially. I was not able to. But
Especially when you're like
yeah,
working a day job plus studying or something
well,
like that.
there's always that. Yeah.
Yeah, we actually have jobs, right? We actually work, so we actually most of us work for a living.
Oh,
So
yeah.
that's awesome. Well, Ryan, I'm so glad that you're here. So you're kind of the newest member really on this call as far as XTM goes. And you've been here for a year and you've been running our security operations team, right? So
Yeah, I'm the director of the Security Operations Center. So, running the MDR service, we take in alerts from different security tools and basically act as an extension of the customer's security team. Especially if they don't have a security team, we act as those experts and help them kind of comb through the alerts that they get and provide that 24/7 service for them.
yeah. And that being said, so Samantha, speaking of security, like you spent a lot of time, right, helping talk to security to our customers before they become a customer, right? So you're kind of in that pre-sale solution space. I mean, what you do the demos as well, right? So, what would you say from a security perspective, Sam, is probably, something that you would highlight? Like if a customer say, hey, tell me about XTM security, like what of this solution is probably something that's at least of note to you, notable to you?
I would say the the ability that the Expel platform has paired with our SOC. It's a really dangerous combination in the fact that we can ingest all of this data, but then we have a really well prepared SOC behind it to be able to handle all of these incidents that are flowing in, all of these threats that are coming in. So these guys are really well versed in what they do. They're very quick acting, very knowledgeable.
Yeah, that's awesome because like with the world of security, right? Speed is everything, right, guys? Like, whether if it's managing endpoints, managing networks, speed is everything, right? It's like speed to how fast the bad guys can get in, or speed to how fast the good guys can stop them, right? And so, there's a lot going on in the world of security these days, folks. Don't know if you've been on Google or on LinkedIn or just been online in the internet, but if you're in the world of technology, we hear about kind of breaches that happen on a pretty regular basis in the industry. And so definitely not the first time we've heard about a large kind of a breach, if you will, from a security vendor or from a firewall vendor or something like that. But one of the latest ones that we've seen is this thing about F5, right? You guys know about this? So let's talk about this a little bit, right? So, and we think F5 has been a wonderful product throughout the years and served customers from a load balancing perspective, and this, that, and the other. So this is not by any means a knock on them, but when you hear the headlines and you see the news articles about it, sometimes you kind of wonder, what does that mean for me? Like, what if a customer's out there or someone's out there and they know that that there's a large breach out there, and if I've been affected, what does this mean? So I think one of the things I want to do real quick is just kind of dispel some hysteria, right? I think what ends up happening in the world of security, like fear, uncertainty, and doubt gets added to anything in the world of cybersecurity to try and push, the sense of urgency, and sometimes it is as bad, some cases, as some of the messaging, portrays, but sometimes not so much in the world of networks and security. So, kind of, if somebody, maybe Samantha, if you want to help, break us down on like, okay, so this F5 breach happened, not a knock on them, but what does that mean? And kind of, can you give me just a couple bullet points on that?
Yeah, of course. So, to make it short and sweet, according to the news, what had happened with this particular breach is that there was a sophisticated nation state threat actor, right, who gained long-term access into F5's internal systems, and this goes back possibly to late 2024. So that is a long time to have access to this data. So they ultimately were able to steal portions of Big IP source code and information about undisclosed vulnerabilities that the customer or the company was actively working to patch. But they not only had that information, but they also had access to configuration and implementation details for a small percentage of F5's customers as well. So it's more than data theft, right? And that's the scary thing about it. It's theft of architectural blueprints for core network infrastructure because these products, they sit between the public internet and an organization's critical applications. So they're basically the digital gatekeepers. So they handle that traffic management, the security policies, that kind of thing. So having access to the source code, the product schematics, undisclosed bugs and vulnerabilities, that's devastating, right?
Or it certainly
think,
can be, right? I mean,
Right.
it's
Yeah.
a big thing, So,
Yeah.
Ryan, any thoughts on this?
yeah, I think one of the biggest scary parts for customers is that the undisclosed vulnerabilities portion, right? So that's a way that right now or during that time, an attacker could get in. Before it was announced, before it was found, this nation state attacker had the ability to exploit those vulnerabilities, or if not exploit them, then to start working on exploits for those. And I think that's the biggest oh man, did somebody get in during that time? I have the F5 big IP stuff. What else could I see during that attack, or could I see something else? Or I think that's one of the biggest things, that defense in depth, needing more than one tool, not just relying on, oh, I've got this firewall, but really, what else could I see during that time? If it was exploited, what else was there that indicated that?
And I think this calls out, team, like from a security perspective in general, like we are past the idea, folks, of living in a world where we think we can prevent all breaches.
Oh
Okay.
yeah,
We're past that now. And I think,
when
just in general, like we no longer live in a world where we think we can plug every single hole and prevent every single breach. And, if you look at the way, like from networks and security and client environments, if you look at the way that most of the industry has spent its money, is that it spent most of its money on prevention, right? It spends on its money, most of its money on building a big wall and a big fort, and then having to try and recreate that idea around now remote users, where not everybody's, the big pandemic happened, so people are now working all over the globe, and how do we put new perimeters around identity? But prevention, prevention, prevention. I think from our perspective, and Ryan, Mike, Sam, I'm sure you guys probably can agree with this, is that we like to think of security from before, during, and after attack, right? Because this idea of thinking that breach is impossible is just not mature when it comes to security. In fact, we like to we like to approach the situation with assumption of breach. We like to assume breach. So then, of course, instead of just thinking these from like a rules-based defense perspective, we want to start thinking about how can we proactively create response remediations if and when a breach occurs, right? So I think this kind of calls back to the importance of having the importance of like an IT managed service provider, and also an IT managed security provider, like an MSSP too. So it's like having both of these, right? In the case where, in some cases, I think, and Mike, you've been in the network space for a long time, right? So sometimes the firewall conversation we think automatically calls back to the security conversation, but sometimes it's making sure that the device itself has all the latest patches, has all the latest support, and it's working, right? Like it's like you got to start there from almost like the network management perspective. There's that side of the coin, and now Mike, you've been in networks for a long time. What do you feel like is the importance of a knock, or like an actual IT from the MSP side? How does that help customers
Sure.
in managing their firewalls, and what kind of how does that help with the whole security conversation in general?
Well, I'll tell you, what we see these days, in particularly in situations where you've got hybrid cloud or cloud-focused deployments of your applications, your various workloads, the attack surface has just grown tremendously in terms of obviously where you can be attacked, the things you have to monitor, the things that you have to be accountable for, not just from an availability perspective, but also from a security perspective. And what that's led to, in practical terms, is a proliferation of alarms and events and alerts. We go from monitoring environments that used to be very controlled and very tight on premise to environments that stretch across unmanaged portions, at least not customer managed or not MSP managed portions of the world. The internet is a great example. Obviously, anything that touches the internet is at high risk of an attack. It's almost a guaranteed thing. I'm sure those security guys can speak to that even more than I can. But what it means operationally is, in the event of a security event, two things happen, right? One is that there are, if you're monitoring it well, there's going to be some indication of a security event, and that's going to fall on Ryan's team and his tooling to identify. But there can be ancillary events that create noise. For example, if there's a real simple use case, is if there's a denial of service over a circuit, then you're going to expect to see the tools team, or the security team see that denial of service or evidence of that, but you're also going to see a circuit that's overutilized and potentially a router that's running high CPU or impacted in some other way. Or maybe suddenly people can't make phone calls anymore where they could before. And so you end up with this proliferation of alarms and events and tickets that the NOC has to address. So one of the things that we work towards, and we're pretty good at, is minimizing that noise so that the appropriate team can work on the appropriate problem when it's an issue. Because you can't be chasing down, you don't want to be chasing down a circuit utilization problem and looking at your users and that sort of thing to blame them or to identify that source when it's in fact somebody coming in from the outside and attacking. You don't want to double that workload on your NOC. You want to focus your efforts, to your point about speed, you want to focus your efforts on what's actually broken. We do that through a number of technologies and approaches. The second thing is that we are becoming unique in the market in that for cloud-only customers, we have a solution that our observability and monitoring come from a cloud source, a highly certified, well-protected, well-designed environment. Or if you're in a compliance type market, whether it's HIPAA driven or FedRAMP controlled or what have you, we can put our observability platform totally on the customer premise where none of your PHI or none of your other critical data leaves the customer's premise or environment. And so that shrinks that surface dramatically. And we can do that in conjunction with Ryan's security team as well, help minimize risk and damage in the event of a breach.
Yeah,
The
that's
other
great.
thing, obviously, is patching. Yeah, and we'll talk about that, I'm sure.
No, patch. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about it, right? Like that's an
Yeah.
important function that I think network operations teams, system support teams, that they, people think patching. Like I think people almost like when I'm talking with customers, like, hey, do you do patching? It's almost like a like hey, can you do this chore for me, kind of thing, and it's almost
It
looked
is
at
a chore. Let's not
yeah,
lie.
it's like, hey, can you handle this chore for me? It's like, yes, patching is a chore, but patching is also part of your security policy. So although,
Right.
like our network operations teams are running patches and our support teams, outside of the security team is helping conduct a patch. Tell me about what
Hmm.
that does from us, like helping keep a
Well,
customer's environment secure, Mike.
it's like any good hygiene. It keeps the germs at bay, hopefully. I mean, it's certainly one of the preventive things that you need to do. Now, F5 affects that story a little bit, but nonetheless, it is certainly a prerequisite to a healthy, stable, predictable environment that has reduced attack surfaces, at least for known vulnerabilities. And what we do through our M&S service is we take some of that chore, that tedium, away. We automate and we maintain a CMDB of what should be deployed for that customer, and we maintain that. And we take prescription. The M&S side of this takes prescription from either the customer's security experts or from Ryan's team to drive what are the set of patches that are relevant for that environment. That's a complex process, and often where companies will fall by the wayside, either in their thoroughness, which the M&S side will help you with, or in the expertise, which Ryan's team helps with.
And that's one of the things I was going to bring up is working with the network operations team, because you have security that's running these vulnerability scans. So we use Tenable for our service. And yeah, we run these scans and then we have these recommendations. Well, where do those go? Okay, well, we're going to recommend to the patching team, here are the top vulnerabilities that we should be taking care of for whoever it may be.
And so, from a kind of all right, if a client's, listening in, they're kind of having this conversation, right? And they're like, okay, I get it. So, you got network operations teams, you got, XTIUM has a NOC and they have a managed network service, right? Which, shameless plug, we're 3-time back-to-back leaders in the Gartner Magic Quadrant for. Hey, so you got this managed network service, and then you have this 24/7 security operations center, the SOC, and they're separate teams, right? So and they're separate by design, right? They're actually separate by design for because they serve different functions, right? I think one of the things, Ryan, that a customer might be thinking is, okay, so what can I do, right? So I think one of the things that we have as a really kind of low bar of entry is that we have a no cost assessment to run Tenable, right, for our customers. Where it's like, hey, give us a chance to at least take a look
Yep.
on where some of the threats might be in your environment. Ryan, what do you think that kind of reporting can do for a customer? Like, do you think there's a lot of value there? Like, I mean, is that just
Oh,
another?
definitely a lot of value there, because you're getting a look at your attack surface and getting an idea of, okay, here's where I've got these openings. And it's not just, oh, here's a report getting thrown at you. It's, okay, here's that report. These are where you should focus. Here's how we could help you if you want that help. So,
Yeah. And that backed on this, like we're talking about this, kind of F5 thing. And again, not beating up F5, but running a tenable threat assessment conducted by the XTIUM team, we can check and see, if there's some kind of breach within the network, if there's some kind of devices that need to be patched. And that could apply to this case with F5 or not. Or if you have Cisco in your environment, if you have Fortinet in your environment, if you're running Ubiquiti, whatever it is, if it's got an IP address, we can take a look and see if it is either, if it's misconfigured, right? Another thing, Ryan, as I was kind of just like refreshing my memory on what we do from our security perspective, is one of the things we find too is if a device or a user is overprivileged. So like, guys, I mean, for those who are kind of still new to security, one of the main components that a cyber hacker looks for is where to gain leverage to do lateral movement, right? So if they can find a spot in the network, whether if it's a user with compromised credentials, or if it's a device or a set of like a Active Directory server or something like that has serious ability for lateral movement in the network, that's what they go for. They go for where they can move laterally. Okay, that's while they're gaining reconnaissance to eventually work their way towards backups, et cetera, et cetera. So, one of the things that we find too is that maybe it's not just a patch report, but it's also where are some overprivileged users and devices that otherwise you just wouldn't even think to look for, right? And that's something else that's I think is of huge value. And as a reminder to those who are listening, that doesn't cost you anything. We can provide that at no cost. And one of they can say, okay, well, I can go to Tenable directly. Sure, you can, but where X Team provides value is that you can sit down with someone like Samantha, someone like myself, and even someone in some cases with Ryan, and we can help break down some of these kind of relatively complex reports, so that you can know what is the lowest hanging fruit, what are the first steps that you can take to really help plug up some of the gaps, and in some cases where it may make sense to bring in a partner like us, right, to do so. So I think there's just it's part of a broader story, and so I think in general, going back to like what you said, Mike, were you gonna say something?
Yeah, I want to add to that a little bit because you're absolutely right about everything you said. But in addition to that, I think that this is the time where we have what F5 brings that's new, or feels new anyway, is the sense of you can't always patch your way out of these security situations, right? We we patch for known vulnerabilities. But in the F5 case, we don't know what that vulnerability is going to look like now that somebody has some sense of the internals of a big IP, right? So what that means is it's now a time for customers who have been on the edge about whether or not they should apply SASE or zero trust architectures. This is a really good time to take a look at that. And XDMs can certainly offer design and implementation support as well as management of those kinds of environments. And I mentioned before too, in terms of platforms, if need be, you want to consider um, monitoring and management architectures where customer data doesn't leave the premise, where that monitoring solution itself is zero touch, a zero touch architecture. Um, yeah, and so we can certainly help with those things.
Yeah, and to add on to that, I think the combination of the, continuous vulnerability management that we do, along with the configuration auditing, that really helps narrow the gap of those exploitable flaws that are out there.
Yeah, yeah, because Sam, to your point, if I run kind of a vulnerability assessment once in my network, back in 2015,
It's just a
or
snapshot in time, you know?
yeah, or when it was the last audit,
Yeah.
it's like if as my environments change, so do my threats, right?
Yep.
Every time I introduce new tools into my environment, new applications into my environment, I introduce new threats. And people's environments change all the time. So to your point, Sam, to make a great point, is there needs to be that continuous vulnerability screening, which I think, Ryan, what we do is with our MDR premium, will include both the managed detection and response that Sam mentioned with like our using things like Expel and ingesting tools. But then we also do kind of like a monthly vulnerability report also for our customers, Ryan. Is
And
that
basically, it depends on what the customer needs. If they only want scans done monthly, if they need scans done like every other week, something like that. So we work with them to figure out the cadence, we do tagging and grouping, all these kinds of things to figure out exactly what works for that customer. And then we figure, hey, here's a monthly review of what we've done, what we've seen. Hey, we also went and got this over to the patching team to get stuff patched for you, that kind of stuff.
yeah? And so, Sam, for someone that like, hey, okay, I'd like to see a demo or something like that. Do I have to go through like 15 layers of committees just to try and get a demo, or is it what kind of
No,
what's
no,
that
you don't
process?
have to make any crazy sacrifices. You can just contact us, especially within our team. I'm one of the main people that does the Expel demo, the MDR demo. So, it's a very straightforward process. You just contact us, set up a date and time, and then I'll walk you through it. We'll discuss it a little bit further, see where the gaps are in someone's security posture at the moment, and then discuss what packages that we do have available, because it's not like you're pressured into just selecting premium, that kind of thing. So we can piecemeal it out, figure out what works best for somebody.
That's great. That's great. Well, team, like we don't get to do enough of these, right? So we always want a chance to just kind of, talk about what's happening in the world of technology and the convergence of how networks and security both work together, and how we have different approaches towards a client's network from both our managed network services and our managed security, right? How our solutions and sales engineering teams work together to design the right like you said, Samantha, there isn't really a one size fits all. And that's how we've designed it. We've designed these different security solutions and managed network solutions to really build out the specific solution for the customer, right? And the cool thing about these offers is that they're not, they don't we don't have one that requires the other, right? If a customer already has some kind of managed network in play already, but they want to bring on security, they can, or if they have security but they want to add a kind of a managed network component, they can, or they can have both. The cool thing I think that I love most about communicating about the XTIUM portfolio is that we've invested, decades of time, over 30 years of building this organization, and we've grown both organically as well as through acquisitions. I think it's like we're at over 16 plus acquisitions since our inception. So we've grown as an organization, and the MSP 501 recently called us the 9th greatest and largest MSP on the planet, right? So that's a pretty serious accolade. And I think one of the things I like to tell people is, sure, we got the awards and we got the the accolades to prove it, but I love to show people the portfolio and then just say, hey, wherever it is that you feel like you need value, we can start there, because we have a very broad portfolio, right? And in some cases, this security kind of recent headline has got a lot of people scratching their heads, like, hey, am I as safe as I thought? Mike, in your case, what do I do when there is no known vulnerability for these 0-day, 0-hour attacks, right? What do we do? We can't always patch our way out of a problem. Sometimes you actually need more behavioral like heuristics like monitoring of your environment. Sometimes there isn't necessarily a patch to identify behavior outside of baseline, right? But if you have something like an intelligent AI engine operating and understanding the baselines of your environment, and then they start to see things outside of baseline, well, that right there, that's when you have an intelligent MDR practice like ours that can start responding to things that looks suspicious. That maybe there wasn't a known patch required, but this was kind of suspicious activity. We call out alerts. I mean, I think we're at like, I don't know how many millions of alerts, Ryan, or events that we sift through every day from a security perspective, but I know it's in the millions. Yeah, multi-millions, right? And so, we sift through a lot of data and we sift through a lot of events to then detect suspicious activity and then from there respond at machine speed, right? So that's the other thing too. Like Mike, you made a great point. You can't always patch your way out of this. Now, sometimes you need a NOC team, a managed network services team, to help you stay patched. But then every now and again, pairing that with a team like a security team like ours that looks more about suspicious activity than anything else, man, that's a winning combination.
That you touched on a piece of a point that I wanted to throw in earlier too, and that is one of the things that's always excited me about this company in the 16 years I've been here, is that Gartner called us out for this. We are a pure play managed service, and what that means for our customers is, first and foremost, we're about the operations of stabilizing the operations for companies. It means that while we can and do resell equipment and we build networks and all that fun stuff, we do it with the goal of providing an operationally stable environment. It's a way of saying we eat our own dog food in terms of our platform, in terms of the architectures we build. It's not one of these, used to be a problem when I was younger, where you would have a VAR build something and then throw it over the fence to operations to deal with the pain. We live with our pain daily, and we minimize our pain daily. We work very closely to do that. So,
yeah, it's really great. Well, team, listen, thank you so much, Ryan, Mike, Sam. We'll do this again soon. But we really appreciate the time that you all shared with us today. For those of you who watch this and have any questions that you might want to add or any comments, please feel free to reach out to us either at xtium.com or through any of the channels that we have available, through our socials, through our LinkedIn, or if a sales rep shared this with you, please reach out to them as well. We're available to you day or night to really help solve real problems for customers from a technology perspective and be a technology partner. So hope you enjoyed this show today. I'm sure we'll do more in the future. Thanks again, team, for the time, and we'll see everybody again soon.
thank you.
Thank you.
See you.